You are 9 years old, and you are already the smartest person in the room. Not the classroom, not the school, the room, any room. And no one has ever hated you for anything the way they hate you for that. One day, you will bet almost $200 million on a private rocket company and an electric car company that every serious investor on Earth tells you will fail. And both of them will work. But before any of that, before the rockets, before the cars, before the billions, there is a 12-year-old boy teaching himself to code in his bedroom, selling his first video game to a magazine for $500. There is a 17-year-old leaving everything behind with almost nothing in his pocket, working farms, working lumber mills, sleeping on floors. There is a 30-year-old who has already made his first fortune, twice, and is looking at the money and asking one question. What is the largest possible problem I can now afford to attempt? This is that story. And it starts long before the rockets.
You are 9 years old. You are reading encyclopedias, not for school, not because anyone told you to, because you have run out of books and the encyclopedia is what is left. By the time you finish them, you will have memorized the Britannica, both volumes. Your classmates will ask you questions they cannot answer themselves, and you will answer them, and they will not thank you for it. They will hate you for it. Pretoria in the 1970s is not a place that rewards children who are different, and you are very different. Your father, Errol, is an engineer. He is also cruel in ways that are hard to categorize, not always visible, not always physical, but present, constant, a pressure in the house that never fully lifts. You will spend the rest of your life refusing to talk about him in detail. The few things you will say, decades later, will be said quietly, with a precision that suggests you have chosen every word to minimize what you reveal. What he gives you, without intending to, is an understanding that the world will not accommodate you, that safety is a negotiation, that the only reliable foundation is what you build inside yourself. You were bullied badly enough to be hospitalized once, thrown down a concrete staircase. You will carry the physical mark of that for years. And here is where something interesting happens inside you, something that most people never fully understand about how you are built. You do not become afraid of pain, you become afraid of powerlessness. Those are not the same thing, and that distinction will drive every major decision of your life. At 12 years old, you teach yourself to code. You sell a video game called Blastar to a magazine for $500. The code is primitive, the ambition behind it is not. At 17, you leave South Africa. Your mother, May, has already moved to Canada. Your brother Kimball will follow. You are done with the place that made you. You are going somewhere the scale of your thinking is not a liability. You arrive in Canada with almost nothing. You work on a farm. You work in a lumber mill. You sleep on floors. And you are not discouraged by any of it, because you have already lived inside a house where the threat was invisible and daily. And compared to that, a lumber mill is just a problem with a solution. You transfer to the University of Pennsylvania. You study economics and physics simultaneously because you believe, already at 19, that physics is the framework for understanding what is actually real and that everything else is just application. You are admitted to a PhD program at Stanford. You defer for 2 days. Then you withdraw entirely. Because it is 1995 and the internet is just beginning to breathe. And you are not interested in studying the future. You are interested in building it. What happens next is not a success story. It is something harder than that, and it starts with a company almost no one remembers. The company is called Zip2. It is 1995. You and Kimball are sharing an office in Palo Alto that you are also sleeping in because you cannot afford an apartment. You shower at the YMCA. You eat at the Jack in the Box across the street. Zip2 is an internet directory service for newspapers. It is not a glamorous idea. But you understand something that almost no one else understands yet, that the internet is not a technology product, it is an infrastructure shift. And the companies that build the infrastructure of infrastructure will be worth more than anyone can currently imagine. In 1999, Compaq acquires Zip2 for $307 million. Your share, $22 million. You do not celebrate, you do not take a vacation. You look at the money and you ask one question. What is the largest possible problem I can now afford to attempt? The answer is money itself. The financial system, the infrastructure underneath every bank, every payment, every transaction on Earth. You pour $12 million into a company you call X. It will eventually become PayPal. By 2002, eBay acquires it for $1.5 billion. Your share, $180 million. You are 30 years old. You are worth $180 million. You have proven twice that you can identify a foundational infrastructure shift and build into it before anyone else. Now comes the decision that separates you from every other wealthy person alive. You look at the money, and you put almost all of it into two companies that every serious investor tells you will fail. One of them is trying to build electric cars at a time when the auto industry has spent a century perfecting internal combustion and has no interest in being disrupted. The other is trying to build rockets, private rockets, at a time when rockets are built by governments for governments, and the idea of a private citizen launching objects into orbit is treated as either a joke or a delusion. You understand the risk. You understand it precisely, in a way that is almost mathematical. You know what failure looks like, you run the numbers, and you do it anyway. Because the fear of powerlessness, the thing that was built into you in Pretoria, in that house, at the top of that concrete staircase, that fear is larger than the fear of losing the money. You are not reckless, you are calibrated. And the calibration says, if humanity does not become multiplanetary, we will eventually go extinct on this one. And if transportation does not get off fossil fuels, we accelerate that extinction. These are not investor theses. These are civilizational problems, and you have decided, quietly, without announcement, that you are the person who is going to solve them. But here is what nobody tells you about deciding to save civilization. The first step is almost destroying yourself in the attempt. It is 2008.
You are 37 years old, and you are watching your life come apart in real time. SpaceX has attempted 3 rocket launches. 3. All 3 have failed. Each failure costs millions. Each failure is filmed and watched and discussed. Each failure is treated by the press as evidence that private spaceflight is a fantasy. Tesla is burning cash at a rate that cannot be sustained. The financial crisis is tightening around every industry. No one is lending. No one is investing in electric vehicles. The board is fractured. The timeline is impossible. Your marriage is ending. You are sleeping on a couch in SpaceX's factory in Hawthorne, California, not because you are performing dedication, because you do not have time to drive home, because if you stop moving, both companies die. You have enough money for one more rocket launch. 1. If it fails, SpaceX is finished, not restructured, not downsized. Finished. And here is the thing about this moment that no biography fully captures. You know the odds. You know them exactly. You have the telemetry data from 3 failed launches inside your own mind. You have modeled every failure mode. You understand better than anyone alive exactly how this can go wrong again. And you authorize the 4th launch anyway. On September 28, 2008, Falcon 1 reaches orbit, the first privately developed liquid-fueled rocket in history to do so. You stand in the control room in Hawthorne and you cannot speak for a moment. The footage shows you trying to find words and finding none. The people around you are crying. You are not crying. You look like a man who has just survived something he was not sure he would survive. Weeks later, NASA awards SpaceX a $1.6 billion contract. Weeks after that, Tesla closes a critical financing round by hours, not days, hours. You have come within weeks, arguably within days, of losing everything you have built and everything you have staked on the premise that one person with enough clarity and enough refusal to stop can change the direction of an entire civilization. And the premise held.
But here is what that year does to you, what it permanently installs inside the machine of how you operate. You learn that the limit is further than anyone believes, further than you believed. And once you have learned that, once you have stood at the actual edge and looked over and not fallen, you cannot unsee it. The edge becomes your reference point. Not the middle, not the safe distance, the edge. And that rewiring will produce miracles, and it will also produce costs that are harder to name. Over the next decade, those two companies, the electric car and the rocket, will do something that has almost never happened in industrial history. They will both work. In 2012, a Tesla Model S rolls off the line in Fremont, California. It is not an incremental improvement on the existing car, it is a different category of object. It accelerates faster than a Ferrari. It has a range that ends the argument about practicality. It wins every automotive award that exists. The auto industry, which has been watching and laughing for 9 years, goes quiet. In 2015, SpaceX lands a rocket booster, vertically, on a drone ship in the middle of the ocean. The booster descends from space, fires its engines with surgical precision, and touches down on a floating platform the size of a football field. The legs deploy, the rocket stands. Engineers in mission control are screaming, some of them are on the floor. You are watching a monitor, and you look like a man who knew this was possible and is watching the rest of the world catch up to something he has held in his mind for a decade. Reusable rockets. The thing that changes the entire economics of space, the thing that every aerospace company said was not worth attempting, the thing that makes the cost of reaching orbit drop by a factor that restructures the entire industry. Meanwhile, you have started a third company, Neuralink, building a direct interface between the human brain and computers, and a fourth, the Boring Company, drilling tunnels beneath cities to eliminate traffic. And you are a co-founder of OpenAI.
You are doing this simultaneously. You are sleeping less than 6 hours a night across multiple time zones. You are personally reviewing engineering decisions at a granular level that most CEOs would delegate to a team of 40. There's a famous story, told by multiple engineers, about a meeting at SpaceX where a supplier quotes a price for a part, and you ask why. The supplier gives the industry standard answer. You ask why again. They go deeper. You ask a third time. Eventually, the conversation reaches the raw material cost of the component's inputs, and you rebuild the cost model from first principles in the meeting, in real time, until the price is a fraction of what was quoted. This is not a management style. This is a physics-based epistemology applied to business. First principles thinking. Strip away every assumption about how things are done. Go to the atomic level of what is actually true. Build back up from there. It is also, if you are working for someone who operates this way, exhausting, in a manner that is difficult to describe to people who have not experienced it. By 2020, Tesla is the most valuable car company on Earth, more valuable than Toyota, more valuable than Volkswagen, more valuable than Ford and GM combined. A company that was weeks from bankruptcy 12 years earlier. By 2021, SpaceX is launching more rockets than any other entity on Earth, more than NASA, more than the European Space Agency, more than Russia. A private company founded by one man with a physics degree and a stated belief that humanity needs to become multiplanetary. You are, at this point, the richest person alive, and you are not done. But here is the part of the story that most people miss, the part that lives underneath every number, every launch, every milestone, the thing that was always actually driving this. There is a question that follows you across every interview, every profile, every biography. Why? Not how. The how is documented in extraordinary detail. The engineering decisions, the management frameworks, the manufacturing innovations, all of it is on record. But why does a person who has already proven the thesis twice, already built and sold 2 companies, already secured generational wealth, why does that person choose to attempt the hardest industrial problems on Earth? The answer you give consistently across decades is this. You are genuinely afraid that human civilization will end.
Not as a rhetorical device, not as a brand narrative, as a belief, held with the same precision with which you hold engineering calculations. You believe, based on the mathematics of probability and the history of mass extinction events on this planet, that the chance of a civilization-ending catastrophe over a long enough timeline approaches certainty. Asteroid impact, engineered virus, AI misalignment, ecological collapse. And you believe the only hedge against extinction is redundancy, which means another planet, which means Mars. This is not a business model, it is not a personal brand. It is a civilizational insurance policy, and you have decided to spend your life building it because you cannot find anyone else who is doing so at the required speed and scale. There is something almost unbearably lonely in that framing, to believe that you are working against a clock that most people do not believe exists, to build systems of redundancy for a catastrophe that, if you are right, most of the people you know will not survive to understand you were right about. And yet, this is also what produces the thing that people who work with you describe most consistently: a quality of focus that is not motivational, it is structural. It is the focus of someone who has not separated the work from survival, not their own survival, humanity's. The engineers who have worked most closely with you often say the same thing in different words, that being near you is like standing next to a force of nature that is directional, that the pull toward what you are building is not inspirational, it is gravitational, and that it is also, if you are not careful, consuming.
You have said, in moments that are rarer than your public persona would suggest, that you are not sure you are happy, that you are not sure happiness is the right category, that the thing you feel most consistently is a sense of forward motion, that stopping feels physically, structurally worse than the difficulty of continuing. That boy in Pretoria who learned that powerlessness is the real threat, who memorized encyclopedias because knowledge was the only thing no one could take away, who left a country before it could define the limits of his life, that boy is still inside every decision, still running the same calculation, still building because the alternative to building is the thing he is most afraid of. And so the rockets keep launching, and the cars keep rolling off the line, and the tunnels get drilled, and the neural interfaces inch toward clinical trials. And somewhere in a factory in Boca Chica, Texas, a steel structure the height of a 30-story building is being assembled by engineers who believe, genuinely believe, that they are building the vehicle that will carry the first humans to Mars. Whether they are right is a question that belongs to the future, but the machine is real, the steel is real, the launches are real. And so is the person who built it, complicated, driven by something most people will never fully understand, running a calculation against a timeline that has no certain end. Here is what you actually built. Not the companies, not the market capitalizations, not the rockets or the cars or the tunnels. You built a proof of concept, the most expensive proof of concept in human history. The concept that one person with sufficient clarity about what actually matters and sufficient refusal to accept the limits that the world offers as reasonable, that one person can move the trajectory of civilization. Not by being perfect, not by being easy to work with, not by being balanced or measured or comfortable to be around, but by being so aligned with a purpose that is larger than themselves, so completely organized around a mission that they cannot fully separate from, that the friction of their nature and the scale of their ambition produce something that no institution, no government program, no committee of reasonable people could have produced in the same time frame. That is the architecture underneath, not the genius, the geometry of someone whose fear of what happens if they stop is larger than the difficulty of continuing. You are 53 years old. You are worth more money than most countries. You have landed boosters on drone ships in the ocean. You have sent astronauts to the International Space Station in a capsule you built from scratch. You have made electric vehicles the fastest-growing segment of the global automotive market. And you are still building. Because the alternative, the powerlessness of stopping, of watching the clock run without someone doing something sufficient about it. That alternative is the thing you were built by everything that happened to you to find intolerable. Somewhere in South Africa, a 9-year-old boy has run out of books. He reaches for the encyclopedia. He opens to the first page, and the machine begins.